Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to another episode of News Dose, where I keep you up to date with everything going on in the game industry, and I have a special episode planned for today. Now, usually when I do News Dose, I focus on every game topic across the entire industry, but today, instead, I will be focusing on one large topic, which is the PlayStation 5, because the official specs was revealed today, which you're probably well aware of by this point. And, well, this could end up being a pretty lengthy discussion as we talk about the PlayStation 5 and how it compares to the Xbox Series X. It was a very odd reveal to say the least, though. At first I thought it was kind of a cool idea to have this pre-recorded video of Mark Cerny taking a deep dive into the PlayStation 5 specs. I even liked that they had him in front of a booth and kind of tried to imitate what a stage conference would be and feel like. After all, these specs were apparently supposed to be revealed at GDC, which of course got cancelled. And yeah, it sounds like a pre-recorded video like this would be a great idea until you started listening to it. Mark Cerny kind of droned on and on about the PlayStation 5 and all the technical intricacies for 50 plus minutes, and yeah, I mean, it was pretty boring. I think something more along the lines of 20 minutes would have more than sufficed. Actually, I think for most fans, they probably didn't even understand half of what Cerny was talking about. This really seemed to be more directed towards game developers in specific, and not fans themselves, though, I mean, I know Sony's not stupid. They were very aware that fans are going to be tuning into this and watch it, and that's why they were advertising it yesterday. Fans were very excited after Sony has been, they've been radio silent for like a year, and this is really the first time fans were going to hear real details about the PlayStation 5 beyond just the logo. Though I do have to say, I was expecting a bit more out of this reveal. As I said in last night's video, I thought they would have actually shown the PlayStation 5 console. We still don't know what this thing looks like. I also thought we would hear about the controller, which sounds like it will have a lot of new tech in it if all those patents actually end up happening. I even thought that they would have shown some demos to kind of explain why things like having an extremely fast solid-state drive is important and what it can achieve. Something like what Xbox did for the Series X, where they compared the load times side by side with the Xbox One X. But instead, it really was just super technical, and I imagine most people didn't really follow it all that well, or was just simply bored. But that's not entirely the point. The thing is, when we get down to the nitty-gritty of each console's specs, how does the PlayStation 5 compare to the Xbox Series X? For a long time, Xbox has held onto the most powerful console narrative, but is that still the case? Well, it absolutely is. I'm now going to put up a picture of the specs for both the Series X and the PlayStation 5 next to one another so you can see for yourself. And there are a few things that really stands out here. The first of which is the GPU computing power, which has really been the most talked about spec within the last year, especially considering quote-unquote insiders were either very misled or straight up lied because they were majorly off with the PlayStation 5. I had seen a lot of insiders say that the PlayStation 5 was going to be 13.3 teraflops, and there was a reason I never reported on those numbers because frankly, I always thought they were untrustworthy. I won't name any names, but you know who you are. With that said, the Xbox Series X sits at 12.1 teraflops and 52 compute units clocked at 1.825 gigahertz. And by the way, those compute units may end up being very important, and I'll explain why here in just a moment. The PlayStation 5, though, sits at 10.28 teraflops and 36 compute units clocked at 2.23 gigahertz. So right off the bat, the Xbox Series X is, it's a pretty significant advantage when it comes to just raw GPU power. However, the PlayStation 5 still looks very good, and I don't want to mislead you there. The PlayStation 5 is still a very powerful console, just the Series X does win here. As for those compute units, from my understanding, the fact that the Series X has more compute units than the PlayStation 5 could give the Series X a big advantage when it comes to one technical feature next generation, and that is ray tracing. That would be a big deal because ray tracing, like I said, will be a big feature next generation, and the Series X might possibly have better ray tracing than the PlayStation 5. Let's move on to the next big spec here though, and that is the CPU. Both the PlayStation 5 and the Series X has 8 Zen 2 cores, though the Series X does have a faster processor clocked at 3.8 GHz compared to the PlayStation 5 with 3.5 GHz. So not only does the Series X have a more powerful graphics card, but it also has a faster processor, which CPU power is important for things like frame rate and certain special effects. In fact, games like Overwatch I believe is very CPU intensive. However, once again, the PlayStation is very good here too. I mean, if you want my opinion, I think the PlayStation 5 console was very impressive, especially when you compare it to this generation of consoles. It's just the Series X is a more powerful console, though with that said, there is one thing that the PlayStation 5 does better than the Series X, and that is its solid-state drive. The PlayStation 5 has a blazingly fast solid-state drive, and even though it doesn't have as much memory, sitting at only 825 gigabytes compared to 1 terabyte for the Xbox Series X, the PlayStation 5 is apparently so fast that in some games when you fast travel, they have to actually slow the load times down so it doesn't feel weird for the player. Now, the Xbox Series X also showed off their solid-state drive decreasing State of Decay 2's load times from 50 seconds all the way down to 8 seconds for the Series X. Now, this was being compared to the Xbox One X. So, of course, Xbox Series X will have fast load times as well, but I do think that the PlayStation 5 will be able to use their better solid-state drive for some interesting applications in games. It should theoretically be able to decrease things such as pop-up, which does plague certain games. Granted, the same can be said for Series X, and they will also be using variable rate shading, which will help there as well. When it comes to the solid-state drives, though, I think we need to see some real-life situations where the extra speed will be beneficial for the PlayStation 5. If they just decrease load times by like 4 seconds compared to the Series X, I'm not sure that would be worth the sacrifice to the CPU and GPU. Like I said though, I do think that there will be some benefits to that extra speed in games, and I think first parties are going to be the ones that really take advantage of this. However, third parties should more often than not visually look better on the Series X, and that's what this boils down to. Across the board, outside of the solid-state drives, the Series X is just more powerful. Now, of course, we don't know a lot of the features on each console, and that may change certain things, but I have to hand it to Microsoft here. They did a phenomenal job designing the Series X. Really, the most important thing going forward, though, is going to be the price and the games for each console. Before I talk about that, though, there is one last noteworthy thing here about the solid-state drives. Of course, on Monday, we found out that the Series X will be using proprietary expandable storage, which not everybody was too happy about. We really need to hear more about the price on that. I mean, we don't want another Vita scenario where the memory was, it was a little overpriced. Sony, however, is allowing a little bit more freedom here, but from my understanding, even though you don't have to get proprietary solid-state drives for the PlayStation 5, only certain ones will work because of how fast the PlayStation 5 is, so don't go out and buy a solid-state drive. For the moment, you will want to wait and see what Sony says about this subject going forward and what solid-state drives will be compatible with the PlayStation 5. Moving on though, we did hear about Sony's solution to backwards compatibility, and this was really the biggest disappointment for me. Based off everything I was hearing, I was kind of expecting backwards compatibility with all previous PlayStation consoles, excluding the PlayStation 3 because the cell processor continues to be a mistake even, over a decade later. Even then though, I was kind of hoping they would figure that one out. Well, unfortunately, we will not be getting backwards compatibility for any of those consoles. In fact, it looks like not every PlayStation 4 game will work on the PlayStation 5 either. Sony's wording was kind of weird here, but from my understanding, close to 100 of the most played PlayStation 4 games will work on the PlayStation 5 at launch. After that, Sony will have to add more backwards compatible games as time goes on. Of course, this is something Xbox has been doing all of this generation. The Series X will continue that as well, and they have the original Xbox games, a lot of the Xbox 360 games, and from my understanding, all Xbox One games will be completely backwards compatible on the Series X. So yeah, that was a bit of a disappointment for me personally. I was hoping for more backwards compatibility with the PlayStation 5. I've been wanting to play Nier Gestalt on a new console for a while now, and unfortunately, Xbox doesn't allow that, and it doesn't look like Platinum Games is going to do a remaster either, but you know, that was always a pipe dream having PlayStation 3 games on the PlayStation 5 anyways. At the end of the day though, we can talk about power all we want, but for a lot of people, the most important thing are the games and the price. I've said this for a while now that I would not be shocked if the Series X is north of $500. That thing is a beast, and we still haven't heard about Xbox Lockhart, which is their more affordable next generation Xbox. So technically, Microsoft can get away with pricing the Series X at a more expensive price than what we're used to because they also have Lockhart. However, if they can somehow price the Series X at $500, that's going to paint Sony in a very tricky situation. We may not know the price of the PlayStation 5 yet, but we do know that they have struggled with the price of their parts. Right now, the parts for the PlayStation 5 sits at $450, which signifies it would probably be $500 at retail unless they want to take a loss and price it at $450 or even $400. Of course, Sony is taking a wait-and-see approach for this exact reason. This is actually all very well known by this point, but pricing will absolutely be paramount here. You can have a less powerful console and do just fine. In fact, several consoles in the past that were the leading selling console of the industry were not the most powerful. You, however, cannot have a less powerful console that's also the same price as your competition. That would be a bad idea. Now, the last piece of the puzzle, though, is the games. Sony has fantastic first-party studios. They have Sony Santa Monica, which works on God of War. They have Insomniac Games, which worked on Spider-Man. Of course, they have Naughty Dog, Sucker Punch, and more. Sony has built a reputation for putting out a lot of high-quality games. That, however, doesn't mean that every one of their games turns out to be a huge success, but they do have some really big hitters. Xbox, though, has invested a lot into their first-party studios as well. Xbox now has 15 first-party studios now, which, by the way, they may have actually hinted at another acquisition yesterday. In a Microsoft Stack pre-recorded video, the Microsoft General Manager of Game Developer Experiences noted that they have 16 studios. We only know about 15, so why did he say 16? I mean, this was a pre-recorded video, and I don't think this was just an error. So he might be hinting at another studio acquisition. We might hear about this later on. I digress, though. We do know that Xbox has invested into a lot of studios, and I think that they will have a lot of great games going forward as well. Obviously, they still have something to prove there, but, you know, I think that they are going to have some great games next generation. Either way, I think both consoles do have a bright future ahead of them, and I think this could turn out to be an amazing generation for all games. I think Xbox is really going to surprise some people with high-quality games, both first and third party. I think Sony will continue to release industry-leading games, and I think Nintendo has already done a phenomenal job with the Nintendo Switch. It's an amazing time for all gamers right now, and I'm excited to see what happens. And I actually want to leave on that more positive note, so if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Peace out.